I am and then got in. Yeah. Okay. Now, two of you have joined. What about the two more persons? No, the hospital guys. Are they joining? Not joining? We don't know. Okay. Right. So 1 minute. So shall we start for the day? I think we do, because we need not wait. Since anyway it is being recorded. How do I go to presentation? Neeraj sir?
Yeah, sir. I'm making you host so that you have
because
all the
this time, since I'm having a full
So now
facility, I
now
would
you are
rather go into the presentation mode.
please. You now you are host, sir. So
I'm the host. Okay,
so you have full right now.
No, okay. TK, breakout rooms, record, chat, participant security. Where do I
this
get
share screen? Share screen is there, na?
Share
Just
screen.
nearby chat, participant, and this.
Yeah.
Share
Right.
screen, green color.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, please try, and if some issue is there, I'm
No,
always there.
No. I think I got it, because I have. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
You're able to screen. Okay, because this will at least you'll have a, unlike the talk, no? So 1 minute. Right. This is on the full screen now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Meghna, you attended yesterday madam's class?
Yes, sir.
What was the topic you discussed?
Sir, she discussed about the principles of operation management.
Okay, well, basics. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are operations management, as you say. Can you recollect some of them, at least in your own words?
So, what she taught yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir, she told about 10 points, which in operation management, there are 10 principles.
Right.
Sorry. Yeah, 10 principles on which they work. That is standardization, automation, work principle, and I have to recall
No,
it.
it's okay. If you want,
Yeah.
you can refer to your notes. Not a thing. It's not a thing. You can refer to your notes. See, basically,
Yes, but
yeah, the subject of operations management, as we said even last time, it applies to all things which deliver a product, a physical or a intangible product.
yes,
There is an input, process, output is the norm for anything, and the process is how the process is done effectively
yes.
and efficiently is all about the operations management. Okay, of course, when you do some operations, you have to do the planning for the operations. Plan, do, check, act. This applies to everything and including in the operations. So you do a forecasting of what you need to and then design the product or the service which you have to deliver, and then the facility and selection of the process. Facility can be in case of manufacturing, whether you buy a land, build, where you do, how you do, what type of facility. If you want to rent it, then it's a different thing. Okay, Shashi Prasad, one second, I admit. So the facility layout is there, work design and measurement is there. How they work as a process, we'll see how it is done. That is what we are going to do today. Then Quality is a very important aspect of the entire process, because as we know, and quality control and resource planning, manufacturing resource planning and enterprise resource planning. These are some things with that. And then there are many other supply chain management. All that comes under the operations. Okay, supply chain management is to provide resources to the input and ensure that the product which is produced is effectively reaches the customer. So the entire gamut is supply chain. Now, having understood what the gamut of operations management is there, as I told, today we'll be talking about work design and measurement. What is, see, basically it all started when initially when products were being manufactured. So there were not too sophisticated machines, and there were some machines, some jigs, fixtures, all that. And this is, I'm talking about the industry 1.0, industry 2.0, those days. That is when industrial engineering as a branch was came in to say that how do you make work efficient? How do you make the work efficient? Gradually, of course, then it started, people started looking at this applicable to non-manufactured goods also, and to services. So today, even the definition of a product is products and services. So the operations, that's why from earlier, we used to call this as production management. In fact, one of the oldest books is Production Management by Buffer, but then the production management became operations management, right, to include products and services. So operations the management applies to all processes. Now, the basis of organizing work is to look at work as a process. So we'll see as we go by, these are terminologies which you should take in for the time being. Basically, work as a process. And it applies to whether it is a tangible product, like in manufacturing, right? And Anshul, last time we talked about automobile, right? Maruti Swift, whether you produce Maruti Swift, or as applicable to banks, hospitals, whatever be the operations which are there. Like today, retail is a huge market, thing. So everything needs operations. Okay. When any operations is to be designed, the basic thing, apart from all that which we talked about, facilities and ERP and planning and forecasting and all that, the basic thing is about how the work itself is designed and measured, because you need an optimum facility and layout of that facility and resources assigned to that facility for the work to be carried out effectively and efficiently. When it comes to work, the first word generally anybody will talk about is productivity. How productive it is. In fact, if you take the world as a whole, we can see some countries have the resources, the manufacturing they're a lot more productive than some other countries. We were very much lacking in productivity as a country, but now, of course, things have improved a lot. It's not exactly what it was 30, 40, 50 years back. Okay, things definitely have improved, Of course, with because of various interventions which the industry carried out to ensure productivity. So the basic design of work itself, how the work is to be done and measured, is what we will be discussing today. So work design and measurement is one of the chapters in your book. I think you have this book, right? Williamson. Oh, I am not it. William Stevenson. That's the book I think is prescribed in your this thing. So the chapter in that. There are four elements involved in the work design and measurement. One is the quality of work life, the job design, methods analysis, and work measurement. If you see the earlier production management era, the quality of life was not given that much of an importance, but then gradually over the period of time, it was quite well established that the behavioral aspects and mainly relating to the workforce is something extremely important. And so today, even in the work design, we have to consider the uh, things like ergonomics and lighting and many other aspects before we start even designing the workplace. I'll briefly take you through the history of industrial revolution, because why you need to understand is that you should understand where we are currently. Although we may be studying certain basic things, how far it applies and where it applies is what we need to understand. You must have heard of many things like 1.0, 2.0. It's all very common today, right? So we are currently under industry 4.0 and going towards industry 5.0. If you take what was 1.0 is simple mechanization of industrial production, basic mechanizations, you can say. The James Watt steam engine, those kind of things, which you must have studied somewhere, like those are the basics of mechanization of any industrial production. Then when, of course, Edison, invented electricity, and of course, then the next era of the second era of electrification and mechanization of the production, which made the industry 2.0, the mass production using assembly lines. Of course, here predominantly manpower was used, although of course there are machines out there, and every single process involved the manpower, and so the manpower efficiency was extremely important. How well the job is done, how it is very clearly defined, and in fact, the industrial engineers of those time, they only considered the workman as two hands and 2 feet kind of thing, and very little of any thought which goes into the workman. Of course, this all went through even the World Wars I, World War II, all that, and then subsequently all thing. And the dramatic changes which happened in industry is when electronics and computers started making their way. So, of course, the year put here is 1970, when the automation was using electronics and computers. Till then, of course, there was very little of electronics which was used in production. The challenge which happened in 1980, of course, in India, it was a little later. If you remember, the 1990 was the year when we talk about, what is that? globalization and privatization and things which happen in India, but across the world, the 1980 we saw the globalization of production, where countries offshored their production to other countries where there is it was much cheaper, and the cost of production was also much lower, because most of the reason being the labor arbitrage, in the sense that what used to cost, let us say, in the US and Europe, the labor was much cheaper in the other countries like China, like Vietnam, many other places where they were outsourced to. Today, of course, we are talking about the 2020 era, where, of course, digitalization started quite some time back, but it but using in production was has come in a very big way, and everybody uses automated, digitized form of production. Of course, you must have heard of IoT today, right? Have you heard of IoT? What is it, Anshaj? Can you just let's make it a little interactive? Yeah. What is IoT?
So when the devices in your home are interconnected.
No, what is IoT?
Internet of Things.
Internet of Things, right? Internet of Things is something which I would say was about how much? 5 years, 6 years? Definitely not more than 10 years, right?
Yes, sir.
So that Internet of Things changed the way, the control of or digitization of control of any device for that matter. Like today, right in front of me, I have an Alexa, okay, right? And most people use Alexa, Siri, all that to, there are houses today which are totally controlled electronically, right? So there are, like I have a robo which cleans. When I start from Bangalore, I switch on the robo, which cleans my house. Right. So by the time I come back, it takes about 2 hours. So I have a clean house by the time I come home, and goes and docks itself. So the electronics and the digitization of electronics has changed the work itself considerably, and notably through Internet of Things, and also the other factors like this machine learning, which has happened, right? And that has again making things a lot more less human dependent. So the future of the technology is going to be personalization, or the fifth industrial revolution, Industry 5.0 as a sort, will be focused on the cooperation between man and machine. Even now, we talk about the man-machine conflicts. I'm sure you must have seen many movies which are there on the man-machine conflicts. Of course, they're all skiffy movies, but still, that usually they tell what kind of technology you can expect to happen. So there is a man-machine interface, and it works as good as human intelligence. Today, you talk of any startup today, like I see today, everybody is talking AI. No, this was not there even 3 years back. Okay, today everybody is talking of IoT, AI, AR, VR, artificial reality, virtual reality. So augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. All this is now being used in the processes in operations, whether it is in manufacturing or in even customer relations management, or even in telecalling, marketing, right? Everything uses all this technology. So Industry 5.0 is putting intelligent works in harmony with the cognitive computing of man by putting humans back into industrial production with collaborative robots. Workers will be upskilled to provide value-added tasks in production, leading to mass customization and personalization for customers. There is one word which you see here, which is very important. This is a word called mass customization. So when you talk about, you understand customization. What is customization? You want something very specific to you. Today, even when you order on, let's say, Amazon or any of the apps, you're looking for, you want the particular color, you want the, the style, everything. Although, of course, it's a standard product, certain any element of customization everybody looks for in whatever we use. Mass production is against customization because it produces one thing, and then like in our days, if you want a car, you either have a Fiat or ambassador. There is no, you don't have a choice. Maybe a little bit here and there, but today you have umpteen choice, brands and variations in the market. Mass customization is about producing mass, but producing to your requirement within that mass customization. I think in the last class, we talked about something called SMED. Do you recollect, any of you? Meghna, we talked about SMED. If you had taken some notes, probably you would have. Huh?
No, sir.
Yeah, it is the process called single minute exchange of dies, which is to do with mass customization. You produce fast, but at the same time that you keep changing, the setting process so fast that you can have a differentiated product coming out continuously. Okay, let's not break our head on that, but then that's going to be a reality. Right. Now, this is a typical shop floor. Can you say where it is, this kind of a shop floor you will see? This is in India. Mahendra's plant is somewhere in Maharashtra. Now, you would, sometime back, you would say, no, this must be somewhere in Germany or US or somewhere. No, it is not so. This is a reality today that you hardly see people. There are many shop floors where you hardly see people. There are more, everything is being robotized, mechanized, digitized, right, and controlled remotely. Now we'll come to the circumstances or the background with which we design a job. As we said, the human element is extremely important in today's job, whether it is any type of in manufacturing or more so in services, because it is done more with brain power rather than muscle power. But these factors are all equally important in whichever be the process and wherever be the operations take place. It's very important to look at the working conditions of, like if you see a modern factory is nowhere, meaning it's totally different from what you would have probably seen in some of the, let's say, the old Hindi movies, if you see, the 60s Hindi movies. You can see a lot of these factories with, so the working conditions are totally different. The light, the temperature, humidity control is important because it makes the person to be more thing. Ventilation, both air ventilation and light needs to be there. Of course, there are laws today. The Industrial Factories Act specifies a certain amount of all these things. That is a minimum. But most facilities today offer much better than what is specified. Illumination again depends upon the work, which is a minute work. You need more illumination nearer the place of work. Noise and vibrations to be very less. If you see earlier, you used to have generating sets producing a lot of sound, but you hardly hear generating sets today. Even in a mall, when you go, the power goes and generator comes on. Do you hear the generator? No. They all become silent generators. Not that the generators have become silent, that they have been made silent by having silent enclosures. Similarly, noise-making machines have to be make sure that you have enclosures to reduce the noise. Right. The work time and work breaks are clearly defined. Of course, you need to give breaks after that many time of work. You have your tea break or your lunch break, and the working time cannot be more than by the Indian law, 48 hours is the maximum. The maximum work, and if a person works more than that, you have to pay them overtime. But of course, a lot of these things don't apply to the software industry. I'm sure, if you're any of you working on. And Sashi Prasad, can I see you? I have not met you earlier. Can you just switch on your camera? Sashi Prasad. Sashi Prasad. He's a person working in the hospital. Okay, I think. I think he's the person working in the hospital. Yeah. So it also does not apply to hospitals. Of course, they do give compensatory breaks, but then but still there are specified maximum working limits. Of course, abroad it is much less. 36 hours. Now they are talking about 4-day work and all that. But India still follows the 6-day work for manufacturing and 5-day work in all services. Right. So software, at least, especially. Occupational healthcare, that is because a lot of litigations are there where you have hazardous substances in the workplace leading to health issues. All that need to be taken care. Safety is one of the most important factors to in the work, and especially when you are working with machinery and many things are there which can lead to accidents in the workplace. Today, you hardly hear of it, but then that's because it is, one is the law is extremely strict on safety, but the management itself nowadays takes it as a topmost priority, quality and safety issues. Ethical issues, of course, gender issues, all that is today is also today is extremely important. And awareness is there to a very great extent, how to handle manpower. Yeah, compensation is obviously is great, is what gives, you can say, satisfaction. Of course, in the theory, it says that it is not exactly so, but you need at least a reasonable and equitable compensation for the work you do, or at least as compared to what is there within the industry, right? Usually when we say compensation, you can't compare, of course, a software employee to a shop floor employee. But within a particular category, at least there is the comparable salaries, right? Right. So all these factors impact productivity for the job to be done. Job design basically involves what, who, how, and where the job is done. So before you design, you need to understand clearly what is the job to be done. Can you define it in detail as to what are all the steps through which the job undergoes? Very simple. Of course, Anshad, you understand the flow chart, right? Yep. Suppose I say that this is the starting point and that is an ending point, as you do probably in a program. Okay. So similarly, when you have a job to be done, what is your starting point? What are all the inputs which comes at various stages of the processes? What are all the processes? What inputs which come in the various stages of the processes? What is the output of each one of those processes? And then what constitute the final output or the product which comes out? It's very easy for anything, whether it is a product to be manufactured or in a hospital or in a restaurant, right, or a bank. So what is the input and what is the output, what all happens in between the input and the output. So you can always do a flow charting of the entire process. But in flow charting, what happens is each job, each of these sub processes is only a box. So you have to go to the next stage of designing those sub processes till you explain the whole thing clearly, right? So job design involves what will be done in the job. Who will do the job? Obviously, you need manpower to do the job. How many you will need? What kind of manpower to do what jobs? Because all these sub processes will not have the same qualification that is needed. Suppose in a manufacturing plant there is a welding job, you cannot use anybody. You need to have a qualified welder, right? So you need qualified people in different stages of the job based on the process which happens there. How will the job be done? This translates roughly into what we call, as you can say, the choice of technology. In a sense that you have a job to be done. There can be a couple of ways or even more than a couple of ways in doing the job, depending on the technology you use, whether it is a fully automated process, is it manpower, more manpower, less manpower, automated, all that. So how the job will be done, it will determine the size of facility which you need, so many other factors which you need, the power which you need, the utilities which you need, all that, and where the job will be done, right? That is the location and other factors which impact on the job design also. So the job design also needs to take into account the productivity factors. As we say that, there are certain areas where productivity is more than some other places. I'll give you an example. Long back, when I was talking to one person who was in the battery manufacturing, marine batteries, they were, they said that, we are going to put this factory in so-and-so place in Maharashtra. So I asked, why is it so specific there? This can be manufactured anywhere. He says, do you know that this is the only place where, the manpower with heavy, people with, they're very capable of doing very hard work. Of course, the cranes and forklifts lift, but then still there is a handling, and you need people who are very tough to handle. I have seen this in many places, In one of the cases where I had to transport an entire plant from Kerala to Karnataka, what I found was the people there who actually handled, you needed only 20 people, whereas I needed 50 people here to do the same job. So there are places where different, there are certain jobs which require high skills, very light jobs with minute things. It cannot be done by everybody. So you need only a certain type of people who can undertake those kind of jobs. So job design has to take into account productivity. It has to take into account safety and quality of life, which we talked about earlier. The other behavioral aspects of job design are job enlargement, job rotation, job enrichment. Now, all these three involves who can do the job, what kind of value addition a person can bring into a particular job. You see, earlier, the thinking was one person can do only one job. Today, the entire industry concept is on multi-skilling. Reasons for multi-skilling are that it is not that a person is able to do 5 different jobs with the same proficiency, but differing levels of proficiency a person can attain by training and looking at a person's own capability to ensure that the jobs get carried on. And of course, in the hospital scenario, you cannot replace a surgeon with, somebody else. Whereas many other jobs, like if it is case of nursing, in case of cleaning, ward boys and many other things, you can use a ward boy for a little more different type of a job. Same thing goes in many places where there can be a job enlargement or multi-skilling. Job rotation is where a person is able to at least have a basic working skill in all the jobs. Usually job rotation is done in more or less in lower level of work rather than in general management. When you join in many companies, the first thing they do for a management trainee is to rotate the person 3 months in a job or 6 months in a job. Supply chain one day, then operations one day, then product development, the marketing or customer relations. So they rotate only to see that you understand all the aspects, so that you are ready for taking on in case of any kind of an emergency requirement. So whether the person can be trained in many of these jobs is something which you have to also take into account when you are designing processes and jobs. Motivation is a key variable. Motivation is, nobody works unless the person is motivated. What creates motivation? There is a huge subject in human relations management. Does money provide motivation? Meghna or Sashi Prasad?
Sir, how can you say that money provides motivation?
Okay, if suppose like you are now in a job. Okay, are you in a job now?
No, sir, I am a student.
You are a student. Okay. What salary do you expect? Suppose in your entry level job, what salary do you expect?
It should be 40 to 50 minimum.
How much? 40,000?
Yes, sir.
40,000 rupees. Suppose I say, no, I can give you only 20,000 rupees. Will you be
I'll be
motivated to work?
disappointed.
You'll be disappointed. Will you be motivated to work?
Yes, sir. If I'll need money, then I will work hard.
Okay. Yes, of course, there are many theories, but in motivation, money alone is never a motivator. But let us say in the same job, your boss takes a keen interest in training you in the job and giving you feedback on how you are doing the job to ensure that you learn it fast. Will you be motivated?
Yes, sir.
Then they announce that, see, Meghna has done this very good job in their house magazine or on the notice board.
Yes, then I'll be happy. Like I'll feel the enthusiasm to work.
So
Yes.
motivation by itself is a big subject in human relations management. But factors relating to motivation, there are demotivators also when it comes to job design. Suppose you are given a workplace where it is very dark, there is no light, there is no ventilation. You don't have, well, let's say, some privacy or something which you expect. The toilets are not clean, right? Right. You don't provide good canteen facility, right? Now, all these can become demotivators, right? So when you say motivation, we also talk about demotivation. So ensure that at least in your job design, when you talk about motivation, remove all the demotivation factors. The motivation factors are the one which probably the HR and other people need to do, but at least ensure that there is no demotivation. Today, of course, in especially software and many work areas, working in teams has become imperative, including in planning, in customer interactions, and in many areas, team working is becoming more and more thing. Not only teams within a same location, but teams across locations. Teams could be somebody in Bangalore, somebody in someplace in Europe, someplace in Japan. Okay, that these are all becoming very common team. So how do you design your job based on different requirements for different teams based on projects and other things? In a manufacturing setup, there are certain things which you may decide to do on a cellular basis instead of a linear basis. So how do you do that? What kind of a flexibility you can have in their job design? Lastly, the ergonomics, which I said, see today, even if you say people who work from home and other things, you say that they have a back pain problem, they have, right, eyes. There are many problems. If you ask, even in Nimans, if you go in Bangalore today, the number of cases which happens from working from home. You see, at least when you're working from your workplace, you have a proper table, chair, light, and many other things taken care of. But then you may not have all that facility when you work from home. So the ergonomics is extremely important. Just to ask you, Anshaj, you are in front of what? Shashi Prasad.
मना करें तो कैसे दिया जाएगा?
Hi, Shashi. Shashi, your mic is on. Can you put your video on? Shashi Prasad. Mr. Shashi Prasad.
नहीं डायरेक्ट
Mr. Shashi Prasad, your mic is
मना कर दिए हैं, इतना बार मना किए हैं सतुल्लान से गलत
anybody has his mobile number which you can call and tell him that.
Yes, sir, I'll call him. Just give me
Yeah.
a second.
Yes, I think he's inadvertently switched on his.
आधा घंटा पहले हाँ 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 हाँ
Mr. Shashi Prasad. Okay, when Anshaj is on the line there, ergonomics is also a factor which is to be considered in thing. Now we'll get into the hardcore of the work study and what is work study about. It is a generic term for those techniques, method study and work measurement which are used in the examination of human work in all its context and which lead systematically to the investigation of all the factors which affect the efficiency and economy of the situation being reviewed in order to effect improvement. Anshad, I think he has gone offline. Yeah. He didn't probably realize that his mic was on in his workplace. So work study is, in fact, it is the study of the minute details of the gross and the minute details of work and how to make the combination of the machine and man to work efficiently and improve productivity. That is what work study is about. That is the definition. The objective of the work study is to improve productivity. See, ultimately, everything boils down to improving productivity. Because only when you improve productivity, you can reduce cost and become more competitive. This happens for anything and everything in the world, right? So the improved productivity of men, machines, and materials. The 4 M's in management are men, machine, men in the sense men and women, of course, men, machines, materials, and methods. So methods is what we are studying with respect to men, machines, and materials in the work study. The aim of work study is to determine the best method of performing an operation of each of the operation and eliminate wastage so that production increases with less fatigue. Most jobs are routine, monotonous, repeated, whether it is a physical job or a mental job, even for that matter. In life, you can have a factor of roughly something like 80-20, where 80% of the jobs what you do are routine, right? even if you take yourself morning to night, there are many things you do mechanically without even thinking. You create your own methods, right, to ensure efficiency in what you do, because you want time for doing other things, right? So you become efficient by process of learning, by process of improving your own methods of doing those things. Now the same thing applies to the workplace. So in a workplace, you arrange work in such a way that you're able to improve productivity by reducing wastage. So the work study is also used in determining the standard time that a qualified workman should take to perform an operation. You see, of course, we all know that we all order pizzas sometime or the other, right? The first person who started that, delivery in 30 minutes or paisa wapas. Which was that? Which pizza was that? I don't know, Domino's or whatever, one of them. Now, how could they do it? It's very simple. They know that from that,
Domino's.
Domino's, no, correct.
Yes.
Now, how can they do it? Because unless they know for sure that what is the process which happens from the time they get an order, that order is transferred to the production unit, because sometimes these orders are taken centrally across India. It has to be transmitted to the nearest location from where they can deliver the details of the order. Then the process of making that particular thing happens. Then it is packaged, given to a person who is going to take it and deliver it to you at your place. So there are roughly these other processes which take place, right? The process time for making a pizza could be 15 minutes. I don't know, no, maybe, I'm sure. But in 30 minutes, all other processes take place so that you get it in your hand. So the efficient design of these processes will finally determine the outcome. So obviously they have, more market because of the efficiency, right? So this happens in almost all other types of products. So we need to determine the time taken for a process to take place, right? To be on the lighter vein, if you see any of the MasterChef programs, I'm sure you must be seeing either the Indian or the thing, the way they chop, let's say, onions, you try to do it. I'm sure I don't know whether you have tried. Of course, Meghna, how fast can you chop onions?
No, sir.
Can you do it like that MasterChef person, just who does,
No, not at
and
all.
most of the time they don't even see. If we try to do that, we'll chop one of our
Yes.
fingers off. Right? Now, we are not trying to time a best person doing the job. Here, that is why the terminology is used, the standard time for a qualified workman to do. You see, in my unit, which I was producing electronic components, we have a certain, in one of the processes which takes a lot of setup time and the changes which are needed, like variety of production and then the change of dies, what we talked about time. I could demonstrate in a particular shift of 8 hours that I could produce 20% more than what the standard production takes place. But then the thing was that at the end of that, what we said was, see, this is the best possible. I'm not going to say that you're going to produce exactly the same way. I'll give you a factor of 20%. So if I produced 100, I expect an average production of at least 80 to happen. So there are days on which maybe the the person producing 80 is able to produce 90 or even 100 or even 110 for that matter. But the standard time to produce is important because the variations can be in the material, the variations can be in the power, because in India, the power, the quality of power is not really good. It could be the machines, wear and tear, upkeep, downtime, many things. So you need to study the standard time that a qualified worker is able to do that simple operation. So that becomes a standard. And then from that, you can calculate how much of quantity of production it can do in a particular day. Recently, in the COVID situation, many interesting things happened in the first wave and even in the second wave, and in between all the vaccination which took place. There were some states which were most efficient in vaccination. Shashi Prasad, Mr. Shashi Prasad, I'm still not able to see him. You talked, Anshad, to Shashi?
No, sir, his phone was switched off.
Okay.
He's not
Oh,
online right now.
Yeah, no, I see him, but no. Okay. Now I ask a question: with any of you have thing, which was the state which was most efficient in vaccination? Can you tell me? You know what is efficiency there? An ampule of vaccination contains, on an average, 10 people can be vaccinated, but they account actually for only 9. But you can extend to 11. Okay, because of all these syringe wastages and many other wastages. And another form of wastage is that if you do only 8 and then keep it away for a couple of hours, that vaccine cannot be used. So that becomes a wastage. The least efficient was Rajasthan. Least efficient was Rajasthan. UP was okay. UP did very well, from where, Karnataka did very well. I have personally seen in an 8-hour shift, 600 and plus people vaccinated by 2 nurses. The most efficient was from Kerala. Because, if you know, Kerala is very famous place from where, most of the nurses, even they, in the Middle East and many other places, I'm sure, Anshad, you might have found a lot of people from Kerala and Manipal, in the hospitals, correct? So naturally, by their own this thing, they are very efficient. So the vaccine productivity, delivery productivity was maximum there. So if you have to determine or benchmark, let us say, today the word we use sometimes is benchmark. Benchmark, whom do you benchmark? We cannot benchmark, let's say, Kerala. But maybe UP, which is a lot more varied and which has shown that it could vaccinate minimum of 9 for every 1 ampule and a minimum of so many people in a given day. That could be a benchmark, because all over, if you have seen, there was so much of debate on why only so many are vaccinated. Why? Take the vaccine hesitancy out of the picture, but still our numbers are huge compared to any other country in the world. We are still able to achieve these numbers. There are targets, correct? So this itself is a case in work study, right? With thousands and thousands of primary health centers rolling out this, correct? So what is the standard time required to do a particular job? We also call it, when you take the entire process from end to end, we call it as a cycle time. What is the cycle time to produce? Like if you say, The road construction, you see, the current government says we are doing some 15 kilometers, 25 kilometers compared to what the earlier 15 kilometers used to happen. It doesn't mean that we take one road and you're able to finish it in 15, in one day. It is the all total put together. What is the total mileage with the same resources which you have? Yes, Mr. Sashi Prasad. Glad to see you. Can you just switch on briefly? I think you are sitting in a pharmacy.
Yes, sir. Actually, I was taking my mother-in-law to the doctor. That's
Okay,
why I'm standing in front of the medical.
I see.
But I am continuous watching your.
Yeah, I
class.
saw that, Mr. Prasad. Where do you work?
Yes, sir. I am working in Brahmanand Narayana Hirdale.
Oh, Narayan Hridayalaya. Ask what? What is it?
Narayana Hirdale Hospital.
Yes. And
And
you are looking
yes,
after?
sir. Yes, sir.
Looking
Looking
after?
after housekeeping, hostel, guest house.
Okay.
All these things I am looking.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Because I just briefly asked you because we haven't met before. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
yes, sir.
Okay. So that is what is the objective of the work study, is to establish the time for a given job. Work study is a
Yes.
technique which deals with the following problem as to how should a job be done. That is what we call as a process. In many of the cases, what we do is we write a process sheet, just like as we talked about the flow chart. Start, do this, do this, do this, do this. Some of these may involve preparatory work for the particular job. Like Meghna, we were telling about onion chopping, right? Usually what do? You put the onion in a little bit of water, right? To reduce the, right? That is also a job, correct? So there are many preparatory jobs, including cleaning, which happens, and the job, and then sometimes setting the machines, setting the, you can say sometimes a temperature, pressure, whatever it is of what you do. Okay. Then the whole thing becomes a job. As to how the job should be done, that needs to be detailed in what we can call as a process sheet. How much time a job should take for completion. These are the two aspects of work study. Answer for the first question. Okay. This is that no. There's some. The role is to standardize the method of doing work, to minimize the unit cost of production, to determine the standard time for doing the task, to minimize the material movement and operators mobility, because something is missing there, to eliminate unnecessary human movements, to utilize facilities such as man-machine materials more effectively, and to systematically investigate all factors. See, in the quality aspect, especially with the Japanese thing which we were talking about, definition of quality is one of the ways of doing quality is to reduce all types of wastages. And there are enormous amount of wastages which happen in everything we do in our life, right? The Japanese called it by their own language called muda. And there are 7 types of wastages, out of which at least waiting, transportation, movement, and processing all involved in the job design. Many a times what happens, there is you do a particular job, and then for the next process it has to travel, let's say, across the shop floor. That is a wastage. You could have designed that job in such a way that one is next to the other. Many a times it is not possible, because that particular process needs a machinery which needs a specialized place or a ventilation or a power or exhaust or many things. Then you either shift this job to that, or you use a lower capacity machine doing the same job nearer to this job so that you don't waste the movement. Now, all this involves in design of the work. So it increases efficiency, provides better quality, faster method of doing a job, improving the working processes, less fatigues to operators and workers, effective control of labor, effective utilization of resources, what equipments you need that can be devised, then pay fair wages, etc. Okay. Advantages, of course, it's the same thing. So obviously, when you reduce manpower, you can afford to pay higher and make Meghna happy. If suppose there are less number of people, correct? If only half the number of people are required, Meghna, from 20,000, we will increase it to 40,000, and then you will be happy, right? So that is possible, yes, right? The more the people, then the amount available is divided to the existing people, right? Job satisfaction, job security, quality, fast delivery, etc. Okay. What are all the components of work study? Work study basically involves method study and time study. There are two things: how the job is done and in how much time the job is done, right? And we all know that time is money, correct? Suppose in a given facility, you are able to turn over, produce 20% more than in some other place where the productivity is lower. Obviously, you can get more profits from this place. And that is one of the basis of outsourcing itself. The outsourcing any job for that matter. India is also very good in getting certain jobs outsourced from other countries. For example, medical transcription, right? India is doing pretty well on that because on an average, we are good in the language, which is common language of the world, which is English. More trained manpower, easily trainable manpower. And there in medical transcription, the time required is very important. Maybe Sashi Prasad would be able to say how fast they expect your transcription to reach them back. So in a facility in India, the person does the transcription, somebody has to supervise, then that has to be translated, made into a document and sent back. If this can be done within 24 hours compared to any other place, obviously you are more efficient and you are more productive. So the two main factors are how the job is done, which is the method study, and how fast the job is done, which is the time study. How the job is done involves arranging your work and simplifying your work and devising economical method of doing that work. In time study, to determine what is the standard time for doing an operation, and both these together provide the higher productivity for the job. Definition: method study is the systematic recording or critical examination of existing and proposed ways of doing work as a means of developing and applying easier and more effective methods and reducing cost. Method study is both for existing jobs as well as for new facilities which you establish, or designing the methods for which you have no proper definition. I do not know how many of you know what is ISO 9000. Have you heard of ISO 9000?
Yes, sir. For standardizing products and services, there's a ISO mark.
Okay, now I will Meghna or Sashi. Okay, now you combined a couple of things together. खिचड़ी बना दिया आपने. अंशर जी, आपने खिचड़ी बना दिया. When it comes to products, there is a product specification which is ISI. It is not ISO. Or ISI actually is now called BIS, Bureau of Indian Standards. Bureau of Indian Standards give you the standards for a particular product. Here, oh, Meghna has gone out. Yeah. Yes, Meghna, you're back in. Whereas, how you produce, like in terms of the work study, including all the elements of work and how standardized your processes are to ensure consistent product. See, we are not talking about high quality product. We are talking about consistent product. The method by which you employ a recorded, accepted, certified methodology is ISO 9000. It is a system standard. Product standard is BIS. Bureau of Indian Standards is for product standard. What you see in electric and all the common things which you have, right? That's a BIS mark. But when they say ISO 9000, that's not from one certifying agency. It can be many certifying agencies. India itself has more than 50 certifying agencies for ISO 9000. There are few of them which are very popular. What is done is this is an international standards as to what all you will do to ensure that your product or service is consistently delivered. There is a system, how systems are organized. So obviously this work study, method study, all that is a process is required in ISO 9000. Sometime back, I talked to you about process sheet for everything, right? Even when you're doing a purchase of some material, whom do you purchase from? Is a vendor certified? What is the certification you have? What kind of an incoming quality you do, right? And how is it stored? How is it used? So when there are, say, let us say 10 processes for making that final product, each of the processes, how is it defined? Irrespective of the person who is handling that, the output from that particular process must be consistent. The machines have to be maintained. The product at each process must be checked. Right? All this forms the method. And in what time each of these processes, within what time, a standard time. not, the best time. The standard time in which it can be produced is that. Now, what determines the throughput of a process? When you say, what do you understand by throughput? I have used a word which is probably what is a throughput? Let's take that example of pizza itself. Okay, as you say, Domino's pizza, easier to understand. Throughput is how many pizzas you can deliver from that particular facility in, let us say, in a given hour. Suppose they get more orders, let's say, than the throughput. What will they do? This problem is there in all kinds of delivery, right? When there is a peak process, there is too much rush for something, you don't get the service or you don't get the product because there is only that much throughput which can happen. The throughput is determined by the bottleneck processes in the production or manufacture. If something has to take place, like a pizza has to be put in the oven for, let us say, 10 minutes. Many other things may be done, kept ready, but this 10 minutes minimum has to be there. Otherwise, it is not cooked properly, right? So when you have, let us say, only one oven, your throughput can be only 6 pizzas in an hour. Or of course, if the one oven can take, let us say, 4 pizzas. So 4 into 6, 24 pizzas in an hour. That is the throughput which can happen. So time study and motion study put together, suppose we want to increase it to, let us say, 50. What will you do? You have to put one more oven, right? But you will also have to ensure that all other processes are also facilitated in such a way that the oven is fed continuously without wastage of time. So the method plus studying the time together forms the work study. Okay, how it is done and in how much time it is done. Every individual processes and put together what is the throughput. Okay. Now comes. So definition of method study is a systematic recording and critical examination of existing and proposed ways of doing work. We already did that as a means of developing and applying easier and more effective methods and reducing costs. Method study or methods analysis. Of course, some of these words are used differently in different books, so don't get confused. It means more or less the same thing. A method is a method, whether you study or analyze. Obviously, you study and then analyze. Okay, you can say. But then the fact is, people use study, some people do analysis. Done for both existing and new jobs. For new jobs, develop charts based on information about the activities. As we said in a flow chart, basic is always the flow chart. Draw a master flow chart, and for each of the boxes, you again draw a detailed flow chart, write the processes. What are all the parallel activities, serial activities, decisions, etc. Now we come to the objectives. The improvement of processes and procedures. The method study objectives are the improvement of factory, shop, and workplace layout, the improvement of design of plant and equipment, economy in human effort and reduction of unnecessary fatigue, improvement in the use of materials, machines and manpower, the development of better physical working environment, and improvement of the quality of procedure for conducting method study. Of course, these are, I mean, you can read there, select the work studying and define the, see, improvement is a continuous process, right? In improvement in anything, even in our own personal life, correct? It is not that you do improvement haphazardly. You have some things in the back of your mind. You know, some things sometimes is becomes necessary due to circumstances, right? Sometimes your own parent comes into your room and say, I want this in, you know, in order by the end of the day. Anshad, hota hai? There may be hota hai na? Right? But in workplace, it is necessitated by the fact that you have to produce more with less. Ultimately, that is a constant challenge. So you keep thinking of how to keep improving. In fact, the Japanese have a word for that. They call it Kaizen. I think we talked about it also. Correct. Kaizen is continuous improvement, but there is also another word which we talked about, you know, business process reengineering, you know, one of the things. That is process reengineering. That can happen when, suppose, in a particular process, you are changing the machinery. What happens? The efficiency of that machine, the time required for doing the particular process, the materials required for that particular input for that particular machinery may be different. So in which case you have to redo the entire methods in that particular process. And improvements is the order of the day. You keep doing it all the time, right? Ultimately, the thing is you have to produce more with less, right? And more efficiently with more productivity. So select the work. So constantly what happens is it may not be done by the person actually producing, but people, when you are higher up in the management, suppose you are the works manager, you'll be constantly looking at how to improve productivity. You may choose a particular process. They say this is worth studying today. You know, if I can show improvements in productivity, if I'm able to rework this entire process. So you form a team, you involve, including the workman, and look at different ways of doing the different ways of doing the job. Select the work worth studying and define the objectives to be achieved. Unless you know that you can achieve considerable improvement, there is no point in working. You know, it's just for a small marginal improvement, you may not want to disturb that existing process. An objective may be to reduce the manufacturing cost or to reduce bottlenecks. What do you understand by bottlenecks? Maybe like in the example of pizza, what we said, or the oven itself is a bottleneck. You may do everything, but the thing is faster. You know, cutting, chopping, dressing up the pizza can be probably done in 2 minutes, but you cannot have a throughput in 2 minutes. You can do 100 and make it to wait near the oven, but still the bottleneck is the oven itself. The process of the oven is a bottleneck, right? So the bottleneck can be manpower, like in case of hospital, like where Sashi Prasad is there. the main bottleneck there is let's say in a OT, is the availability of the surgeon itself, right? If the surgeon is not available, right, you cannot conduct the operation. And the availability of OT itself, in availability of operation theater, suppose we have to do the turnaround, he knows that, once in between operations, it is not that it's not like the oven, you remove one pizza and put another pizza. Once one OT is finished, you have to sanitize the entire thing. That takes a certain process. That may take 20-25 minutes, half an hour. Set up, make other things ready, ensure that all other equipment are sterilized, ready, and then take in the next case. You can do it like a huge assembly line also. I've seen in which is that hospital in Delhi, which has got 25 OTs. And there is a person sitting outside and looking at all the screens of 25 OTs, and 24/7 they work. So there are different ways of doing it, but main problem in any operations is the bottleneck. Which is a bottleneck, and how do you improve the bottleneck process? Reduce fatigue, etc. Record all the relevant information pertaining to the existing method in the form of a chart and obtain a more clear picture about the same. Recording can be done with the help of process charts, diagrams, motion and film analysis. Of course, these are the earlier kind of methods. Of course, today we have the CCTV also to do that same thing. Motion study, micro motion studies. Process charts, there are different type of process charts. Outline process chart is for the entire process. Okay, that is from beginning to end. While preparing the outline process chart, we use the symbols for operations. Like, of course, since you have done flow charting, you know the symbol for start, then decision, the process itself, storage, movement, all that. These are some of the process chart symbols. Usually, which are there in the symbol is the operation, the transport, which is that arrow, inspect is the square, the delay, because delay does not mean, it could be the time it has to put on hold. If suppose in a particular job, the temperature of that particular item has to come from, let's say, reduce from, let's say, 100 to 50 or 60 before you can handle. That's a delay, right? You're taking this pizza example. Suppose you remove from the oven, you can't directly put it in the box. It has to be at least it can be handled. And that also may involve in changing the texture of the thing, So delay, storage, and the decision box. In any flowchart you've seen, no? Yes or no. If yes, you go there. If no, you go, go back, kind of thing, or redo. So these are process flowchart symbols. So you can have manpower flowchart, equipment flowchart, or the material flowchart, but usually you combine all these things into a single flowchart. But if you have to study only the equipment, then you can do a separate flowchart for the equipment itself or the materials itself. Flowchart symbols, yes, we know that start or end is that oblong thing. Each process itself is the step is the square box in which you describe what the process is. Decision is a diamond-like thing. Action which take place is a parallelogram kind of a thing, and the flow line, which are there. These are different types of flowchart. I will not get into this. Multiple activity flowchart. We talked about man-machine flowchart. multi-machine flowchart, etc., etc. Okay. Flow diagram in a manufacturing shop, overhauling or a repair shop, or in any other department, there are movements of men and materials from one location to another. Through process charts indicate the sequence of events. They do not illustrate the movement of men, etc. Okay, that's a different flow diagram. Some string diagram, when paths are many and repetitive, a flow diagram becomes congested and it is neither easy to trace it nor to understand. Under such conditions, a string diagram is preferred. These are different types of diagrams. Today, of course, in most of these, you have ready-made templates which are available, I'm sure, Anshay, correct? You ask for anything, standard templates are available, you can use. What is important today, it is not the whether you know about a tool or not, but when to use what tool is the most important in any activity, including on the operation theater, like for a surgeon, right? Or a mechanic. You cannot use a screwdriver as a hammer. In fact, there is a standard saying which says that if you know only the hammer, how to use a hammer, then all problems look like nails. Because you know only the hammer, right? So any problem is there, you will take a hammer and start hammering. So if you're for a wise person, he should know the different types of tools and when to use what tool under what circumstances. And whenever you study any of this, which is a skill-based program, it is your knowledge of what tool to use when. The detail of the tool and availability of the tool itself is today, the contents are freely available. When I say tool, the digital tool, right? So, but these are the different types of charts which you can study, and then you should know what type of a diagram, flow chart, process which you should use in under which circumstances. Then you critically examine the analysis of what you have done before and what can be eliminated, simplified, or combined. That is very important. Many a times we do things without realizing that this is something which is not really needed, which you can do away with. Sometimes the technology has changed, or this is no longer needed by the customer, or many things are there. So if periodic assessment of your activity to see what can be eliminated, simplified, or combined should also be done. In fact, we also give it a name called value engineering, in a different terminology. We call it value engineering, how to improve processes to make it more productive or less expensive, right? The basic question of what is the purpose, who is doing it, where, by what equipment, tool, etc., and what is the sequence of operations. Develop a best method. Once we have analyzed that, and it should be safe, practical, economical, and acceptable to all. In fact, especially I would say acceptable to the person who is doing the process, unless you are able to convince the person concerned, and it is also co-developed along with that person. Work study should involve, according to me, the person on the job and install the process. Maintaining, of course, once you install, make sure that the process is maintained by periodically assessing whether it is being done the way it is done. Now, in ISO 9000, this is done by revising your process chart And what in ISO we call it as an audit. There is an internal audit which takes place of the processes, and once in a year there is an external audit to see whether all processes take place as you have defined. So there, when there is a change in the process, you rewrite the process for that particular method and periodically ascertain that people don't go back to the old method. People tend to do that, right? So that once you have changed the process, to ensure periodically to maintain that the process is being done according to the new process. Principles of motion, there is a spelling mistake there. Principles of motion economy. Okay. See, this is all micro motion study. In fact, this somewhere along the line, I think I've seen that word, Terbligs. Especially in that industry 2.0 and 3.0, where we saw there was a lot of work done on kind of micro motion studies, because they saw that that by doing that you can improve the way the work is done, and especially with respect to the human intervention or human use of the machines and materials and equipment. One of the famous scientists at that time used to be a husband and wife team called the Frank and Lillian Gilbreth. And the work they did was they just interchanged their name, they just put it ulta. Terbligs, they called it, right? Terbligs are the smallest piece of work which you do. It's like I take a pen to write, okay, right? So this particular motion involves that there is a pen there. I move my hand from here to the pen, grasp the pen, bring it onto the pad, hold it in the correct direction, and then start writing. Okay, now if you are to define this particular simple motion, such motions are studied very minutely to understand how best it can be done. Now, you may say that it is quite trivial, but then when there are hundreds of such simple operations being done, and that impacts the efficiency or the throughput of a certain thing, then abroad, I think most of you, some of you would have traveled, would see that any maintenance man person, like I've seen one electrician on what you call a street pole, like we have, all of us have street poles, and when something goes wrong, an electrician climbs, switches off the power, climbs up the pole, fixes the wire or fuse or whatever it is, and comes down, right? Invariably, what happens, if you see the Indian mechanic or operator, many a times he goes up and then shouts to his assistant sitting below, standing below, to throw him that screwdriver or pana or whatever you call, the up, and then he catches, does that, and say ye nahi hai, dusra de do, all that kind of thing happens, but it doesn't work. Whereas I've seen a Japanese workman, it's like those army guys, putting a belt with all the equipment around that belt, and he knows which type of screwdriver, which pakad bolte na, all that is where. And he has everything with him. He doesn't have an assistant. Climbing up the pole, he just puts his hand, removes it, works, puts it back there. Now, obviously, a person who is so well organized is able to do the work at much less time and do it more effectively than a person who has to keep finding for everything. Right? This affects, of course, the work. To study this, if it is a mass production, there are various methods. Work sampling is one of the things. Of course, those of you who know statistical analysis, you don't do everything, like even in now when we do the political, our elections are coming in UP, right? Now, I don't know whether already people have started predicting how many seats what party will get. Has it started? No, no. No, I think all this sea water analysis and the other, many of them. How do they do it? They don't go. They can't go and ask. You're the largest, I think, population in the country. 22 crores. What is the population of UP? I think 22 or 25 crores. The largest state population. They obviously you cannot go and ask everybody. Out of which, okay, even if you assume 15 crore is the voting population. So most of these companies who do the analysis, they do a sampling, right? And in India, you know how heterogeneous the sample is, in terms of it varies from place to place, in a given place from locality to locality. The religious diversification, the all kinds of diverse population we have. But still, some of them predict in a fairly good way, right? The trend is most of the time known even before an election takes place. Very few times you have a surprise coming out, correct? So it is done by sampling. Here again in work, if you take a sample periodically, we use the same sampling techniques when you're doing process control also, or process control or quality control using statistical process control. We do what are called as X bar and R charts to find out the variation in the processes. Similarly, in work itself, what work is done and what is the time taken for each of the work can be done by work sampling. So work sampling is a statistical technique used for determining the proportion of time spent by workers in various defined categories of activity. It is as important as all other statistical techniques because it permits quick analysis, recognition, and enhancement of job responsibilities, tasks, performance, competencies, and organizational workflow. It is used for calculating the standard time for a job. As I said, what you do, how you do, and in what time you do, this ultimately determines the process. Okay, work sampling was developed in England in 1930s. As I said, it is all industry 2.0 when all these things were being done. Next is the time study. Time study is a work measurement technique for recording the times and rates of working for the elements and specified job carried out under specified conditions and for analyzing the data so as to obtain time necessary for carrying out the job at a defined level of performance. Of course, today nobody does this, to be very frank. Like you're saying, no, use a stopwatch to determine how much you're doing. But then, of course, there are more refined ways of doing it, because I don't think even that today any kind of a workman or yourself will permit you to be done that. But then there are different ways of doing it. But then ultimately you need to study the time, okay, for the thing. That's all I can say. Selection of the job. These are steps in time study, calculation. So basically, it is all done to calculate what is a standard time. Standard time is not the best time, not the worst time, but there is always a standard. And so in statistics, we know about mean and median, right? And you know about distributions. I think Anshad, you would have studied. I do not know about Meghna. Meghna, do you know mean, median, standard deviation?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Till 12th, I was in maths.
Oh,
So,
great. Good. Yeah. So basically, it is a method to understand that what is a standard time. And of course, in statistics, we always use a standard deviation to know what is the best and worst outcomes which can happen from the standard, from the mean or median, whichever you are using. Okay. This is some example illustration. Anyway, I will not get into this because I don't think the purpose of this program is to get into too much of calculations, because I would personally have you to understand the process rather than really get into this. Okay. I have sort of, what's the time now? 7:38, is it? Oh, 7:51, what happened? Why did I have two times showing on my mobile? So we have about 10 minutes. So you want to discuss, you can unmute all three of you. Let's have some interaction. Ask me anything. Unmute, please. Anshad, Meghna, Sashi. Meghna,
yes, sir.
yes. And your
So
video. Yeah.
I wanted to ask that these slides we will get.
I can give you, but you'll have to ask. The coordinating person is Dr. Rekha Prasad. See, basically,
Yes, so yesterday she mailed some of them. So
okay.
about yours.
See, I can put it in that OM2 group, no?
Okay, sir. Yeah.
OM2, I can do it right away. That's no problem. It's in that WhatsApp group, no?
Yes, sir.
Today, as soon as I finish, I'll put it in the OM2 group. Okay. Mailing is not necessary. These are PPT, no? You can correct, no? Easier.
Yes, sir, but it's easy to make notes later on, so that's why.
No, I'm saying I can put it in your WhatsApp and you can download from the WhatsApp to whatever system you have, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, sure.
It's easier now. Okay. That's not what I meant when you asked a question. Question in the sense what, even if it is not relating to the subject, you still ask. Okay.
Sir, is there a reference book for basics in operations management?
See, there are many books. You see, the one which is prescribed, which I also bought after she said, I have many books myself in my library. Operations Management by William J. Stevenson is the book. But I do not know within this scope of this program whether you will be able to go through this, because these things are MBA level books, correct?
Yes,
I would suggest that way Operations Management by Mahadevan, who is an IMB professor of operations. Okay. Basically, it's a thinner book. Okay. and touches from the management point of view, what you need to know, rather than as a practitioner, industrial engineer, let us say. For an industrial engineer, even this is not sufficient. Okay, you get it. I have another book, like let us say, this is a book on just work study. I don't know that I can show
So
you.
we can't see it.
Oh, you can't see, no? No, I think it is not reflecting. Yeah, this
You
book
can
is by
just
the
tell the name.
International Labour Office, Geneva. No, you don't need this. Definitely, you don't need this. And even this book, maybe it's too much for this level of thing. I would say a book like Mahadevan's B. Mahadevan, Operations Management, the professor from IIM Bangalore, should help you. Ultimately, you need to understand concepts. See, most of these concepts, you keep on, unless you keep on hammering, no, somewhere it'll click, right? You can do some rote learning for the purpose of an examination, but that really doesn't help. You should be able to understand and see how you can apply in whatever you're doing. May not be all, but at least some of them. Correct. I have myself written ISO manuals. I've written process sheets. I have devised statistical process control in some of the processes in our own operations. But to learn that, I have taken many years, right? But to understand the concept, it didn't take that much time. But to get into the detail, it takes more time. But unless you are apply your mind to understand the concepts, it will be very difficult. Even that will not happen, right? So you must have a little bit of questioning mind, a little bit of visualizing mind, like you say. Anshaj was meaning which you're an engineer or?
Sir, automobile.
Huh? Automobile, yeah, correct. See, automobile is probably the easiest branch of engineering to visualize, right? Correct?
Sir, how so?
You're able to visualize a lot of things, Of course, including the IC engine, you're able to visualize. There is a mock-up and then showing you how it works. Do you know which is the most difficult to visualize? I'm sure within your own group of people you would have seen,
Sir,
Electrical or electronics?
electrical, sir.
Electrical is the most difficult. After all, electrical में क्या है यार? बोलो. Voltage है, current है. हाँ? Resistance है, impedance है, capacitance है. 5 चीज है, बस इतना ही. Correct? There are only 5 things in electrical. And it's the most difficult subject because you are very difficult to visualize. We most of the time use hydraulics to explain certain concepts in electrical engineering because hydraulics is easy to visualize. Similarly, what I'm trying to say is when you're studying something, if you're able to draw some kind of visualization on what is being done. If you have worked in a factory, yes, it's very easy. Or you've gone for some industrial tours and studied some of them, kind of thing. In fact, before I started my factory, I took a training for 1 month in Japan. Working from 8:30 in the morning to evening 6 daily, along with the workman. No, it is even when you observe, do study, then only you understand, yes, this is possible. Correct? Till then you don't know. But still, today you have YouTube, you have so many things, where a lot of things are available. So you must have that inquisitive mind and try to see, you take one. Today we have talked about many of these. Whichever you fancy, try to go into a little depth. Easiest way of learning, right? And there are content is something today available very freely.
Yes, sir.
Content is the easiest, because earlier in our case, we have to go look for a book, no Amazon, no nothing. You will have to physically go to some place, look for it, go to another place, ask so many people. Today, sitting at your desk, you can get, the world is at your desktop,
Yes,
or
sir.
mobile even for that matter. Why desktop? So take one which you want an answer, get into the depth of it. I can say that, if you don't understand, ask me the question. Anyway, I am there on WhatsApp, no? Correct? Send me a WhatsApp, either in the group or personally. So the more you start questioning and trying to understand, you will be able to relate it to work situation, and you can relate it to any situation. Why it's not necessarily only for a particular work you have to do. Correct? Right. So that is what gives you some learning. Degree to mil jata hai, but you have to learn. Correct? So that is what it is. So please do that. Okay. And let's have some interaction. Today I'll send you the PPT. I'll send it to you. That's not a problem. I'll do it right away before I get up. And okay. So see you next Sunday.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will stop sharing. And bye. I have another meeting now. So I'm getting into that. Okay.